everyone. Welcome to Wildcard Wednesday. My name is Ben Pulowski. I will be leading you through the webinar here today. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your attendance. Our topic for today, complementing default reports with the Geotab Marketplace. So really two things that we want to accomplish today. One is looking at the default reports that are built into your database. We're not going to look at every single one. We're not going to focus on the more obscure ones today. But in addition to those default reports built into the database, we're also going to take a look at some of the custom reports that are available in the Geotab Marketplace. And those are built off of the default reports. They are 100% free to download and use. There's some good ones that you may not know about, so we'll show you those today and how to access them. So let's jump in here and take a look at some of these default reports. And what we've done is we've gone through and we have organized the reports by looking at our 5 pillars of innovation. So those 5 pillars are productivity, safety, fleet optimization, compliance, and expandability. And these are just sort of different ways to think about different things that you want to accomplish when managing your fleet. So looking at productivity is based really around monitoring driver behavior. So looking at the reports, what reports best fit into that category? Maybe a customer visits report or an idling report, number of stops, things like that. Safety, focus on things like an exceptions report or risk management, and so on down the line. We don't have any reports necessarily that fit into the expandability pillar because the expandability is based on obviously expanding what you're using through MyGeotab, and the reports are in there already. So none really fit into expandability, but we've added another category of reports just for the purposes of this presentation called database management, and we'll get into those as well. I mentioned the Geotab Marketplace. That's part of the purpose of this webinar as well. So the Geotab Marketplace, if you're not familiar with it, it provides many different third-party integrations that we have partnered with. So there's physical hardware add-ons, there's different mobile apps, again, developed by third parties. What we're really focusing on today are these custom reports. You can supplement existing reports in MyGeotab. Again, these reports in the marketplace are 100% free. You can find them at geotab.com/marketplace by selecting custom reports. And I'll also send you off with a copy of this presentation that I'm going through, and you'll have links to the marketplace and all of the different reports that we cover. So with that, let's jump into our first pillar here and take a look at some of the reports that are related to productivity. One report that you are probably hopefully familiar with is the trips detail report. So shows you the stops for your vehicles, where they stopped, how long they were stopped, idling time, driving time, zone interactions. So historic tracking to examine trip information for a previous date. It's located on the map by clicking on trips history, and then you have the data provided in the report: stop location, stop time, idle duration, trip time, and distance. And for each default report, it's going to look pretty much like this, highlighting the purpose, where you can find it in the database, the location, and then the data that is contained in that report. And again, you'll have this resource to take with you when we finish up the webinar a little bit later on. Here's just another shot of that trips detail report. So when you're looking at it in a list view in the database, you can use it to highlight the breadcrumb trail and view the different vehicle activity there right on the map screen. Trip summary report, also related to productivity. So rather than showing this vehicle started driving at 7:03, it stopped at 7:49, it drove 16 miles. This is just giving a summary of all trips over a given time period. And you can compare different data between different vehicles, like mileage, idling, and even time spent in different zone types. And that's what those pie charts over there on the right are. When you mouse over them, it tells you what percentage of time was spent in a customer zone or an office zone or driving or things like that. This is also accessed through the map and the data contained in the trip summary report: mileage, driving time, idling time, and zone type duration. The driver congregation report. So this is one that's probably a little bit lesser known, but this can be a very valuable report if you have drivers who they stop at the gas station, hang out drinking coffee every morning instead of going to their first job. And we've heard of things like that. So the driver congregation report determines when more than one vehicle or driver is in close proximity to others. You can specify when you run the report the minimum distance required for it to count as congregating, minimum overlap time, the minimum number of congregating vehicles, and you can exclude stops in zone types. So for example, in that screen cap on the right, we've excluded stops within our office zones, which kind of makes sense. We would expect drivers to have their vehicles together in an office zone. This is located under activity in your database, and you can see the available data for this report: vehicle driver, stop location, date, duration, arrival and departure times. Customer visits report shows different zone interactions. So displays how long your vehicles spend at different locations and identifies opportunities to increase productivity. Located under zones and messages, and this is going to display for you the vehicle, the zone, when they entered the zone, or when they arrived, when they departed the zone, how long they were in that zone for, and the zone type, which you have over there on the right. And you can even run this report for different individual zones. You can run it for different zone types. You can run it for individual vehicles or groups of vehicles. So however you want to look at this data, you can look at it in different ways, just depending on how you run the report. This is the time card report. This is getting into work hours a little bit, located under activity and work hours in the database. This report is designed to show how much activity that the vehicle has each day. It is often based off of the time between the first ignition on and the last ignition off. You can use this in conjunction with work hours if you want to. You don't have to, but you can see there first departure, last arrival, stops within customer zones or non-customer zones, trip duration, idle duration, and total duration. And that first departure and last arrival, just to specify, is based off of ignition events. So when was the first ignition of the day? When was the first ignition on, rather? When was the last ignition off? And then how much time passed in between those events? A number of stops is a dashboard report. This is one of our stock dashboard reports that's built right into the database. Lists the number and length of stops for the previous day. You can change this to display a different date range if you want, but by default it is set to yesterday. This is actually built off of the risk management report, but you can access it from the dashboard or through selecting the view in risk management. And it has all the same data as the risk management report, which we'll get to momentarily. So this is another good one to gauge productivity if you're maybe a delivery company or something of that nature. The number of stops that each vehicle makes, there's going to be a correlation between that and how much revenue each vehicle is responsible for bringing in. The more stops a vehicle makes, the more money you make. So this is getting into our custom marketplace reports for productivity. So the first one highlight here is the last 3 months mileage trend report. So you can use this report as a dashboard report. You don't have to. You can use it as an email report, but pretty straightforward. Looking at that bar graph over there on the right just tells you how many miles were driven by the entire fleet over the previous 3 months. So if you want to reduce your miles driven or look at larger trends, this report is going to be useful for you. And all the reports here, there's a hyperlink right here to direct you to that report in the Geotab Marketplace. Another one for productivity is the weekly idle cost daily trend report, and this is going to show you how much money you're spending on idling every day over the previous 7 days. This is based off of the general rule of thumb that 1 hour of idling is going to burn 1 gallon of gas. This report is also available in either gallons or liters. Let's get into our safety reports here. So first in our safety, we have our exceptions summary report. This is listing each vehicle. It's listing the exception and the total duration, the total distance, and the total number of incidents for each vehicle for each exception. So we'll show you the detailed report in a second. The summary report is just going to give you the totals. This is accessed through rules and groups, and you can see the data down there at the bottom. So pretty much what you see in front of you there: name, exception, duration, distance, and the count. Now this is our exceptions detail report, and this is if you want to see every single individual exception as opposed to just a total. If you want to see a speeding exception, like the first one that we have there, gives you the location, the date, the start time, the duration of the exception, the distance, details, can have the max speed against the road speed. It might have, like right there, you have idling time after hours usage. So that's the detailed report. This is our risk management report, and this report actually contains a lot of different data on different categories. Because it has so much data contained in it, this report is usually a really good starting point for building a custom report. If you wanted to look at a distance report, a max speed report, idling, after hours trips, you can bring exceptions data into here. So there's a lot of different things you can do with this. Because of that, this report is even used for building some of our more complex driver scorecards. This is located under the Activity tab in your database, and again down there at the bottom is the data. You can bring up to 6 exception events into this report in addition to all of the data that's already there. So again, when we're looking at a scorecard, we're looking at maybe how many times they broke a speeding rule compared to the distance that they drove. Much more manageable to do with a risk management report than another report like an exceptions report. Speed profile is going to give you a visual representation of actual speed versus posted road speed. So you can see there the blue lines represent the driver speed. If you have the orange straight line like the one on the very left and one on the very right, that's an estimated road speed. And then the red horizontal lines are the actual posted speed limit. This is also located under Activity. For data, we have NA because this is one of the few reports, if not the only report, that you cannot export out of the database. So this is really only available as a list view in the database, and you can go and mouse over it and gather all your data, but you cannot download this into Excel or as a PDF. This is the Debug report. It's also known as the Log Details and Accident report. This is a very detailed report that can be used for accident reconstruction, GPS coordinates. You can even use this for troubleshooting in certain instances. So this displays the data. Pretty much any data that we're getting is going to be listed in this report, whether that's data from the engine or it's data from the Go device. GPS coordinates, accelerometer data, so detailed accelerometer data, left, right, forward, back, up and down. RPM level, gear position, cranking voltage, you have engine coolant temperature listed, gear position, so pretty much anything that you're looking for you can find in this report. Because it's so detailed though, you don't want to run this for all your vehicles for last month. This really isn't even one that you're going to want to look at regularly. But if you have a vehicle that gets into an accident, then you're going to want to consult this report. It's there if you need it. For our marketplace reports, for our custom reports, we have the safety scorecard report. So this is a little bit of, can be used as gamification here, where you can choose the different rules that go into the report based on how often they're breaking the rule, based on how far they're driving. It's going to assign them a score for each category and also a total score. You can also align that with company expectations. So maybe your company goal is for all of your vehicles to be at 95 or above. Maybe expectations is 85, below 60 is below expectations. So just a way to synthesize this data and get an idea of how your vehicles are doing in these different categories and with following different rules. Exception detail with trips history, pretty self-explanatory. It is trips history report with exceptions built in. So you can very easily see, okay, this is where the exception took place. Click on a link, it's going to open it up in the database, and you can see exactly on the map where they were, how fast they were going, all that stuff. So it's just sort of combining those two different reports into one. Top 5 speeding violations, so it's going to give you the top 5 drivers or vehicles with the highest number of speeding events in a specified time period. So if I want to look at who had the most speeding events over the past week, it's just going to give me the top 5. Fleet savings summary. I listed this report under safety, but it could probably go under really just about any pillar. You may have heard about this one before. There's been a lot of talk over this. If you were at Geotab Connect, we went over the report at Connect. We've done Tuesday talks. We've done a couple Wildcard Wednesdays on this report. But if you're not familiar with it, just to touch on it briefly, this is a report that was built by a couple of our solutions engineers, and it is designed to estimate a fleet's existing and potential cost savings in the areas of safety, fuel, maintenance, and productivity. So what we're focusing on here is the return on investment, which you're probably familiar with, and the cost of ignoring. So based on your use of telematics, this is how much money you're saving. But based on industry data and benchmarking, there are this much more potential savings available to you that you can be taking advantage of. This is what the report looks like when you download it and when you look at it in Excel. So you have on the left the total monthly savings, and then it's broken down by category: safety savings, fuel savings, maintenance, and productivity. If I'm looking at safety, for example, my savings for last month were $3,853. Over the course of a year, I'm saving about $46,000 just on safety alone. But there's a potential savings that I am missing out on, and that is an additional $8,600 per month. This is based on a lot of research and industry data, and I'm not going to get into it. What I would recommend, if you are interested in this report, follow the link in this presentation that you're going to get. There's lots of information on it in the marketplace. There is a white paper that gets into far more detail than I'm able to right now. But that's the fleet savings summary, and definitely recommend checking that one out. So pillar number 3, we're going to get into fleet optimization, and this is mainly dealing with engine data, engine faults, fuel, keeping your vehicles on the road, keeping them healthy, running them efficiently. One report. Hopefully you know this one. This is the Watchdog Report, and this just shows you if your vehicles are communicating. How many are communicating? How many are not communicating? How long have they been not communicating for? This report is going to give you data, serial numbers, odometer, engine hours, firmware, VIN, etc. This is based off of the standard vehicles report. So any data that's in the vehicles report is going to be in the Watchdog Report. The Watchdog Report just makes it a little bit easier to read. Engine fault report is going to display the fault details triggered by the Go device or by the engine, and it assists in prioritizing vehicle repairs. So we have telematics device faults, GPS quality poor, telematics device has been unplugged. That's the Go device self-reporting. It's reporting on its own status. You also have these faults that are coming from the engine. General vehicle warning light, reductant heater B control circuit open. So it gives you insight into exactly why that check engine light is coming on, and that's data that you can take to your mechanic when you bring the vehicle in to be serviced. We have the engine status, also known as the engine measurements report. This is another one that's sort of like that accident and log details report that I showed you. You're not going to want to look at this regularly. There's so much data in here, but it's there if you need it. So in-depth engine measurements, ignition, speed, RPM level, the telematics device voltage, oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel level. There's 1,000,001 different things that are displayed in this report. But Maybe I have a vehicle with an after-hours usage exception, and the driver is saying, wait a second, I didn't drive the vehicle at that time. Well, then I can come into my engine measurements report and I can pull, as I have here, a history of ignition events for that day, with 1 being ignition on and 0 being ignition off. So you can use it to supplement all of the other data that you're getting, but probably don't need this as a dashboard report or anything like that. Reminder rules report. So this is going to list all of the different maintenance reminders that you have set up in your database. Now there's basically 3 different reports that are related to maintenance. The first is this, it's reminder rules. All this is telling me is these are the rules that have been set up. This is what the rule is called. What's the time frame for the rule, what's the distance for the rule, and what vehicles have I assigned it to. That's really all I'm getting out of this report. Report number 2 is reminders due. Now this is one that's probably going to be more beneficial to you. If I were going to set up an emailed report, I'd probably use this one, because this is going to show you vehicles that have either upcoming maintenance or overdue maintenance. You can access this report through your database, or you can set it up as an emailed report, which is pretty much true of all of these. The third report that falls under maintenance is the maintenance history report. And this is going to show you the maintenance that has been done on the vehicle. So it gives you a record, the date, the odometer, the engine hours, and that can be used to view past maintenance and see what's been done historically. Fuel usage report. So this gives you an overview of the amount of fuel used in a selected time period. So this lists each vehicle, distance traveled, fuel used, and based on that data, it's going to give you the fuel economy of the vehicle. This is located under engine and maintenance in your database. Now, along with fuel usage, you also have a fill-ups report. Now, fuel usage and fill-ups largely depend on the type of vehicle that you have the Go device plugged into. It largely depends on the vehicle. Vehicles operate in different protocols, and simply put, some vehicles are able to send data on their fuel usage and their fill-ups, and other vehicles are not. That's a vehicle limitation. When we are getting fill-ups data, this is what it looks like, where it shows us the date and the time and the address of the fill-up. It's pulling in that GPS data from the Go device, tells you the fuel economy. So I'm looking over here on the right, that 14.53 miles per gallon. So the fuel economy leading up to this fill-up, how much fuel was added, so in this instance 15 gallons, and the odometer at the time of fill-up. This report would also be used with fuel card integration. And if you do have fuel card integration, it's going to bring in the cost of each fuel transaction into the database, and then you can compare the fuel transaction that was imported in from your fuel card provider and compare it against the fuel transaction that we are recording through the Go device. Marketplace reports. One is the Dynamic Vehicle Maintenance Reminder Report. This is helpful because with the stock maintenance report in your database, it will send out however often you tell it to. So if I have my reminders report and I say it, email out to me once a week, that report is going to email to me once a week whether I have any upcoming maintenance or not. If I don't have any, it's going to email me a blank report. This report, this marketplace report, will only send if you have vehicles within a certain threshold that you specify. So you can say, I only want to know about an upcoming oil change if they're within 500 miles. You can do that with this report. Follow the link here. There's instructions on how to set that up. There's also the Watchdog by Minute reports. Standard database Watchdog report we were looking at was based off of time periods of days. This is looking at by minute, so it's a much shorter timeline, offline for 5 to 30, 30 to 60, or 60 minutes or more. So this is designed to help with short-term telematics connectivity issues. Leading into the telematics device issue detection report. So I had mentioned earlier that when you're looking at the engine faults report, they're basically coming from 2 different categories. You have data that's coming from the Go device, like telematics device lost power or firmware update applied. You also have data that's coming from the vehicle, like when you get a check engine light on. This is just focusing on these telematics device issues, and it's going to point you to possible issues with installation and connectivity. I like this report a lot. I recommend this report a lot. If you have instances of vehicles going offline, they are losing power, you're getting weird accelerometer data, I would highly recommend using this report because it also gives you explanations on what these different faults mean, and it tells you how you can address them. So highly recommended on this one. Last 3 months fuel trend, pretty self-explanatory. It's going to tell you the fuel consumed by your fleet over the last 3 months. Comes with a dashboard graphic built in if you want to use it on your dashboard. And now we are going to get into compliance. Compliance is a big issue right now with the ELD mandate, and we're not going to get very deep into these HOS reports in this particular webinar. I'll give you a quick commercial here and let you know that the webinar that we're having 2 weeks from today is going to be focused on Geotab Drive, changes to Geotab Drive, what's happening with the ELD mandate, and a bunch of new reports that are available. So if you are interested in this, make sure that you sign up for the webinar happening 2 weeks from today. Within our compliance reports, we have the standard HOS logs reports, so record of duty status for each driver for each day. You can see there the different duty status changes, date and time, their location, the vehicle, the trailer, even is going to display any violations if there are any. You can view it as a graph if you like. You can print it out, save it as a PDF. So that's the standard HOS logs. HOS violations, so provides the rule set violations that occurred for each driver. All of these reports are located under the activity tab in your database. Gives you what type of violation it was, when it occurred, and some details on the actual violation. Driving after more than 8-hour rest limit, maximum 14-hour workday limit, and so on. HOS availability provides time remaining for rest, driving, on-duty, workday, and a driver cycle. So it gives you the driver and then how much time is remaining in each one of those different statuses, including the full workday and whatever rule set you have them on for their weekly cycle. DVIR report, so this is a record of vehicle inspections. Also includes driver comments, includes repairs that were made. This is located under engine and maintenance within your database, and it's going to bring in all of the different data associated with all of your DVIR reports. That includes pre-trip and post-trip inspections, comments, who repaired it, who certified it, all that good stuff. Finally, here is your IFTA report. This is the International Fuel Tax Agreement report. This one displays each vehicle, and it displays each jurisdiction that the vehicle drove in during whatever time period you ran this report for, which is usually monthly. It can also be quarterly. So looking at this vehicle first gen, during the time frame of this report, this vehicle drove in Nevada, Arizona, and Utah. The enter time is when the vehicle entered that jurisdiction or that province for our Canadian friends, and when it exited that state or province. So this vehicle entered the state of Nevada April 1st at 2:11 p.m., exited on the 9th at 8:52 a.m. The enter odometer, 156,860. The exit odometer, 156,996 for 136 miles driven between April 1st and April 9th in the state of Nevada. Now this vehicle entered Nevada again later in the day on April 9th, so it totals that up. So you have the individual instances of entering and exiting the jurisdiction, but we can also see the grand total for Nevada, or this date period, was 282.5 miles. So that's your IFTA report. A new addition to this report is if you do have fuel card integration, it will bring those fuel transactions and the fuel economy for the vehicles into this report. That's if you have fuel card integration. A couple of marketplace reports here. One is total unassigned trips, which is a dashboard report highlighting any vehicles that were driven without an assigned driver. So maybe your driver forgot to log into the Geotab Drive app. Maybe they were intentionally avoiding logging in. So this just shows you the total trips that happened without a driver assigned. Possible logout issues highlights any drivers that may have forgotten to log out of Geotab Drive at the end of the day. So want to make sure that they're not going into violation just because they forgot to go off duty or left themselves on duty. Someone had to move the truck in the yard and it put them back on the drive line. So we just want to prevent those things from happening. I also want to take a moment to mention here that within the last day or two, just this week, we have added 12 new custom HOS reports to the Geotab Marketplace. We're going to get more in depth on those 2 weeks from today, but just know that there's a lot more custom reports available for HOS than what we're going over here today, and those are all in the marketplace. So our final category that we have here is database management. So these are things that might not necessarily fall into a pillar, or maybe they can apply to all pillars, but reports that if you know how to use these and where to go to find what you need is just going to make running your database, make the logistics easier for you. One is the Audit Log. The Audit Log is a report that basically tells you who did what in the database. Now, maybe this isn't something you're too concerned about. Maybe you have a lot of users and you want to have specific control over who does what. And for large fleets, that may absolutely be the case. Well, if you have a vehicle that was deleted or someone changed the security clearance of a user or really anything like that, you can find that in the audit log, find out what they did, when they did it, who did what. User list report provides a list of all users in the database. This includes their user information, so their first name, their last name, what group they've been assigned to, their data access, and also their security clearance, so what they can do in the database. This is sort of related to the audit log. You, of course, if you are the administrator for your fleet's database, you want to make sure you know who can do what and who has permission to do what. You can find that in your user list report. Zone list report just provides a list of all zones within the database. Zone name, if the zone has been assigned to a group, zone type, and then visibility. So if that zone is visible on the map screen. And you also have the device report. So I mentioned this earlier with the Watchdog Report, where this is going to give you all this different connectivity data about your different vehicles. So if you want to pull a list of serial numbers, VIN, current odometer, what type of Go device they're using, firmware version, when they first communicated, when they most recently communicated, all that is in this device report. And finally, the last report we have is your groups list report. So again, this is just more of a logistical report. You have your company group, you have child groups inside your company group, you have subgroups inside of those child groups, departments, managers, sales, vehicle types, reporting subgroups, status groups if you're using Garmin messaging. So the groups list is just going to give you a list of your groups, your subgroups, and the group comments. That is going to conclude the presentation for this week's Wildcard Wednesday. My name is Ben Pulowski. We thank you very much for joining us here today. We appreciate your attendance and hope that this was useful for you. And thanks again. Have a great day.